Welcome back to Arsenal Pass, episode 208.
Live from London.
You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
I'm here with Brian Gottlieb, lead game developer, senior game designer for Legend Story Shows, and my casting partner for the weekend. I got 3 questions for you, Brian.
I have 3 answers, maybe 4 if you play your cards right.
I reckon we can get 4 out of you.
Okay.
What hero is winning Pro Tour London this weekend?
I've been waffling a little bit. I was going with Zen. We did a dev talk. I shouted out Zen as my pick. I'm not feeling it anymore. I'm just not. I don't think Zen has the closing power. I'm on the Enigma train now. I just think it's Enigma's time. I think these Enigma players are so good. They're so practiced with this deck. They, moment to moment, make incredible decisions. They're making incredible deck building decisions. I've seen literally throughout Enigma's life, like 4 to 5 different modes of Enigma, and they understand exactly when each one is at its nadir. And I think they're just going to make the right decision, and Enigma's going to carry the day.
I agree. I think Enigma's been around for a while now, and I think these lists are really refined. People are going to bring to this weekend.
I totally agree.
My second question, who is going to win? I don't know if I caught on, I think you threw a few names around on your latest dev talk. Who's winning?
I'm pretty sure I only had one. I talked about a few people, but my pick has been consistent. At Calling Prague, Simon Nielsen told me that for the first time he was going to be able to put time in and prepare for Constructed. I know he's probably the best limited player in the world right now. That's my read on his skills in that area. And if he's got the time in Constructed, that's my pick to win the tournament.
Right.
He's just that good.
Lastly, I have to ask you, what are you most excited for this weekend? You're going to be up here on stage very soon. We're here just in the hall just before things open up. You're going to be here doing the keynote. You're going to be in the booth all weekend. There's lots happening. I imagine there's some high C stuff happening, but what are you most excited for this weekend?
Almost always my answer for these things is the opportunity to share what we've been working on with people. Obviously there's so much we keep secret, so much we're proud of and waiting to unleash upon the world. But this weekend, I will be now casting a Pro Tour / Worlds with the 3rd member of Arsenal Pass. I've done 2 other members of Arsenal Pass. I now get the 3rd member on my resume.
There we go.
It's like you guys are just sprouting new podcast hosts out all over the place. But yeah, for the 3rd time, I'll share the booth with an Arsenal Pass host.
There you go.
It's gonna be dope.
Wait till we get the 4th host.
Yeah, I can't wait. You gotta replace that new guy you brought in. I don't know what you're doing on that end.
Sorry,
Pankaj.
So before we kick off into the weekend, Pankaj, and we get to asking some players from around the floor their thoughts on Pro Tour London, what hero is going to win, what they're expecting from the weekend, what they're excited for, what it might mean to win Pro Tour here in London. We're going to talk Pro Tour London ourselves, things that we're looking out for the weekend. Of course, we're both going to be in the booth. We're going to be looking at, which heroes we expect, metagame predictions, talk a little bit about limited as well, maybe some dark horses, players to watch, teams to watch, and then we're going to hear from people, right?
And some traps, exactly.
Some
Heroes
traps.
you shouldn't be bringing, you should be embarrassed to bring.
Not Arachne?
Huntsman, yes.
Yeah. Arachne traps. But first, no news or anything really this week, no fun cookout. But one thing I did want to cover is this is episode 208 of Arsenal Pass, which marks exactly 4 years of Arsenal Pass. So just want to first of all say a massive shout out to all of our Arsenal Pass family, our friends, and those who have been listening, watching over the past 4 years. I know we've got people who've been watching and listening since, basically day one, right? So whether it was me and Brendan or now Pankaj and myself, this is Arsenal Pass, so big thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thank you to everyone. And I want to congratulate you, Hayden, for being there for all 4 years. Obviously, I just joined about 6 months ago, but honestly...
you can take credit.
This has been... thank you. But I want to congratulate you for, honestly, this massive milestone and just being able to do this consistently for 4 years. I have seen behind the scenes, the passion that Hayden puts in and the amount of work that he puts in, and it's absolutely incredible, man.
Thank you,
I think you should be very, very proud of what you've accomplished.
Well, I'm happy that we get to do it together. And then we're here in London and we're going to cast this weekend, not together, but in the same booth, on the same seats.
We'll see. I don't know. Maybe we can get one in. I don't know. I'll try. Yeah.
That'd be cool, actually.
Right?
We should try that.
Yeah.
Okay,
we should try to just take over like one of the games and be like, hey, we'll see.
Brian, Sam, you guys can sit it out. We're gonna do this game of draft. I don't know.
Oh, good.
I tell you what, if there is a feature match game that involves Nu into Enigma, maybe we could do that.
That would be really cool.
Because that's also a cool matchup, I think, especially in this meta game with the way people are setting up their Nu list, the way people are setting up their Enigma, well, potentially their Nu list, we'll talk about that. But I think the way people are setting up Enigma, like I think it can be a really, really interesting game. So that's something that I would definitely love to do.
The matchup has evolved very, very uniquely. It started off with like super Enigma favored, and it became like even / maybe a bit Nu favored, and now it's kind of the pendulum's like swinging here and there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would say Osaka Worlds. I would say it was Nu favored. Like for the room, I would say overall Nu was probably like on average the Enigma deck and the average Nu deck. I think it was Nu favored. So very interesting. Let's get into talking about Pro Tour London before we take you down to the floor at Pro Tour London to hear from some players, some friends, not just players. We're going to try and grab some of the other casters, grab some of those players who maybe calling players, for instance. We're going to try and get a wide range. Maybe we'll throw like a cosplayer in there. I don't know. We haven't done it yet. We're going to go down after this and do it. So, but let's start. I want to talk a little bit about the narrative of this Pro Tour to start with. It is our second Pro Tour in Europe. It's our third Tier 4 event in Europe. We've had one Worlds, and we've had Pro Tour Lille back in...
Wait, so it's the third Pro Tour in Europe, right? Amsterdam and Lille, and then now London?
Sorry, Amsterdam.
Yes.
I get that, Amsterdam. I'm forgetting Amsterdam. Because I wasn't there, I'm like, that one doesn't exist. Yeah, sorry, third Pro Tour, fourth Tier 4 event. Our first two Tier 4 events were won by European players on home soil in the form of Matthew Folks winning in Lille, and then we had...
Pablo winning New Jersey.
Well,
you said...
Yeah, Europeans were dominating, that is true.
Yes.
In Europe specifically.
Oh, sorry, in Europe specifically. Yeah, okay, no, then we had Worlds Barcelona.
That's really going to piss some North Americans off their bunkage. Yeah, exactly. And then you had Pablo winning in New Jersey. But you also had so Michael Hamilton won the first ever Worlds, so got one back for Team North America. But then you had... Alex win in Worlds in Barcelona on Phi, and then we go to Amsterdam, and
Shoma
shows up and breaks the tie, I guess, on that. That was our first player from Asia. Yeah, Asia
winning
Pacific,
a Tier 4 event.
Anywhere outside of Europe or North America, winning a Tier 4 event, right? Which is crazy. So I think when it comes to narrative for me this weekend, if I think, I guess from a player standpoint, and a regionality, a representational standpoint. I mean, we're going to talk teams in a second. I think the teams aspect is becoming a bigger and bigger part of Flesh and Blood as, the game evolves, as people start to coalesce in groups, start to take, I don't want to say more seriously, but it's becoming more refined as a semi-professional sort of game for people to spend, their time on, and people then put more organization into how they prepare for events. You start to have more this organized piece to it, and that is being shown in the form of teams. So we'll get to teams in a second. But I think from a regionality standpoint, it's really interesting to me. I think it's this constant battle of like Europe versus North America. Asia started to come into the picture in a big, big way, and maybe not gotten the wins.
Yeah, but I will contest that. I think Asia was already in the picture.
Sure.
I mean, when we talk about Blue Pitch, oh my
well, that's
God. They've like always been in the picture. And it just took a while until someone from Asia took down a Tier 4 event in the form of Shoma, but I think they've always been there. They've just been so close.
That's the thing. For a while, it was like they were just outside the top 8, right? If I go back to San Jose Worlds, for instance, like there was 2 Blue Pitch in 9th to 16th at that event. And then you get a year down the track to Barcelona, and then it's like, we have 2 in top 8 now, right? It's just been this evolution, right? And I think, now there is a real trio of this battle of like representation from Southeast Asia, your representation from, I would say it's more been Central Europe, I would say. I'm thinking about Arthur Trahay as well, winner of PTLA, and then it's been, unfortunately, in the US, it's not been Canada as well. It's just been the US, I think. Although I think you've got players from South America and from Canada kind of knocking on doors.
I mean, we had like a Yuki top 8, right? Worlds Barcelona, I believe. Yes,
and
Iceland.
Tara top 8
exactly.
Pro Amsterdam as well. Not to say that they haven't, but I think it's been more of a US dominated thing, just given. Honestly, I mean, if you take out Michael Hamilton from the occasion, I mean, Michael Fong as well, obviously winning at Pro Tour Baltimore, but I think the Michaels, if you take the Michaels out of it, I think, actually at that point, it's very interesting. It's probably more, maybe even
Canadians,
slanted in terms of the view.
Aaron Chance as well, obviously. Can't forget. Yeah.
World's Barcelona top 8. So but I guess the areas that are now on the rise, I mean, we just had our first calling in Brazil, so South America, Felipe, top 8 at Pro Tour LA. Was Felipe?
I think it was LA. Yes, I mean it was on Kano, so it had to be LA.
It was LA
because the only other one was New Jersey, where Kano top 8
exactly.
Pro Tour,
and then I think the one region is, unfortunately, my neck of the woods has been a little bit underrepresented, and we've got players, we're not converting it.
Yeah, and then you're in the booth, not showing up, not top 8ing this event. I mean, kind of your fault, man. What are you doing?
My fault. So the regionality is interesting to me. Should we go straight into teams? Because I think teams also represent some of that regionality, and let's just start with Blue Pitch, because I think if I think about teams in Flesh and Blood now, or our team in Flesh and Blood right now, the one that is on the pinnacle to me is Blue Pitch. Like, they are the best Flesh and Blood team currently operating in this game in terms of results. They're a pretty tight-knit team as well. I think they're about 7 or 8 players.
They're like less than 10.
Yeah, so they're not wolfpacking it out. They've got like 7 or 8 players who are consistently putting up insane results. There's Shing, you've got Alan Lau, Pudding, obviously.
Nova.
Like and there's also a few others, and there's Jack Tang. Like there's a few other players in there who have also put up top 16s, top 32s as well. But just insane. I think, and I imagine it's just talking narrative. If one of them was to lift the trophy this weekend,
I'd be so happy. I mean, you speak of them being at the pinnacle, like right now. I think they've been at the pinnacle and the best team for a while.
For sure.
Like even until like I think a year or two ago, people were having these conversations around what's the best team, and like Wolfpack was in a conversation. I was like, I think it's just Blue Pitch in terms of what you brought up, which is a small-sized team.
Based on numbers.
Just a small-sized team and a percentage of them that keeps top 8ing or even top 16ing these tier 4 events. And not to mention that they are also consistently performing at the tier 3 and lower events, right? You're constantly hearing them. Like at this point, when you're like, someone from Blue Pitch won a Ballhard, and that's just like, this is another Tuesday or whatever, right? It just keeps happening. And then they're top 8ing callings left and right, like Pudding and Shing, like top 8, like every calling they show up to, basically.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm with you, I think. They are at the forefront, but I think there is another team that people have their eyes on.
If Blue Pitch are the incumbent, I think this super team is the team that I don't know if they have an official name. Like
They do.
The
Armory.
The Armory. Okay,
which is a very fun.
I think super team's a better name, but
they
can't call themselves the super team. Other people have to coin that for them, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
But they call themselves the Armory, and there's a bit of trivia around their naming convention. So because it's Simon Nielsen's team, right, and it's from Europe.
Yeah.
When he submitted their team name,
has a U in it.
Yeah, it has a U in it,
Yeah.
and then Ethan got a message from Brody saying, "Can you remove the U from the Armory because the event it's meant to be a play on obviously Flesh and Blood Armories, right? There was which is like an Armory team, so you need to remove the U so it's in line with what an Armory is called." And I just found that piece of trivia so freaking funny. I wish it had a U in it though. As someone from Singapore, I'm just like, come on,
me too. Of course.
You should have a U in it.
It's the correct way to spell.
Exactly. So, but I think Brody won out, and then now they don't have a U in the name. So I was like, damn, rip.
So if people aren't familiar with this, with the Armory, I'm going to call them the super team. And I think I'm going to push the narrative. Because either they do really well this weekend and you go, yeah, these are the best players in the world, or they have a bad weekend, and that's also, as in my view as a spectator, interesting to see, because it's like, wow, I mean, they came together and it didn't pan out in the way that maybe they would have liked it to. So I'm going to call them the super team.
We've spoken about this before, right? And we've seen this before. I mean, we both followed esports, like various forms of esports. I guess I haven't in a while, but back in the day, it's like they'll make a super team in an esports team, like in Dota, and then it's like, and they just don't perform. Like either it's like clashing of egos or just. As much as, I guess in those cases, it is more of a team game.
That's the difference.
It's more of a team game, so it's a little bit more like you need a little bit more, what do we call, cohesion in the team, more than just like raw talent.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't quite translate, but I think something that might come up, something you might see is like inbreeding, right? How is this super team dealing with inbred testing, which we have seen happen time and time again in like other teams before?
Well, that's what I was going to say. If I compare this to some of the previous card games or TCGs I've seen where super teams have evolved, I think that's something that we have seen before. Like famously, there was a Magic super team around the Channel Fireball days, and something similar happened where like basically the players all arrived on a deck that they should definitely not have played, and got like, they basically, their testing was so inbred, and they thought the metagame was going to shape out in a certain way. What I will say though is I think this group of players. So if you're not familiar, Michael Hamilton's in there. Michael Fung's also in there.
Yes. Brody's in it.
Yeah, Yuki, Brody, Simon Nielsen is kind of leader of that team.
Aaron Chance, Justin Koo.
Yep.
We're definitely missing some people.
There's others. There's about 12 or 13 players, I think, in the group. But yeah, so it'd be interesting. But I think with this group, they're a bit more connected outside. They have these outside connections. I think that's a big part of why they've been brought in as well as some of their connections. So I think they might not fall into that trap, but it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, I would say that, if Blue Pitch, the established team, you've then got the super team rising up to say, hey, we're the challenge this weekend.
Challenges, yeah.
But there's other teams out there as well, like established teams that have been around for a while. We were talking before, I think, shout out to the Sunflower Samurais. Also they're great to see at events because they're just such an energetic bunch. They bring such a vibe to these Pro Tour events.
They're just so fun. Yeah, they're out there, they're having a great time. They're reminding us that we're here playing games and it is fun to play these games and they're just laughing and everything. Like Daniel Correia, right? I think we remember seeing him on stream and he's just smiling and laughing and just having a great time as he top 8 at PTLA.
Pro Tour LA, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Just in case people don't, I'm also going to give an explanation. Sunflower Samurai is from Spain. Pablo Pintor, famously the kind of head of that team, but he has joined the super team for this event. So I don't know what the dynamic looks like within the Sunflower Samurais, but obviously they have other players who have PT top 8s, calling wins as well. So it's not just a Pablo show, but it'll be interesting to see if they take it personally and they're like, you know what, we lost Pablo, he's meant to be our best player, but we're just as good. We're going to show up and fill the gap.
I think that is the thing about teams, right? You're like, Pablo's the best player, but at least has the best result in a sense.
Sure,
but
definitely.
He's been testing with them.
He's bringing them up at minimum, even if that's just maybe one way to look at it. Maybe he's bringing them up, but.
Well, I was thinking the other way around.
Which is to say, the other way around.
like the reason he's there is because he's been testing with these players, which means they have their own, merit on their own. It's just we haven't seen that translate to a result yet. But someone on the team does well, it is a team achievement, and it means the team is at a certain level to be able to train someone to be at that point, right? And I want to move on to a next team. I'm going to call you out in an outdated reference there, Hayden. When you talk about a big team and you say they're wolf packing it up, that's an outdated reference, man. These days it's the Runaways that wolf packing it up, in that they've just become so massive. Like they're like, I don't even know how big they are. They're like almost 20, I think. They're like
really
they're pretty large, many of them. But obviously a very strong team as well. Shout out to their podcast. Actually, I do enjoy listening to that every week.
Shout out to Runaways, notable players on the Runaways.
So we've got
and
Cody Williams.
North America, right?
They're from North America, yes. Cody Williams, who I don't think he's top 8 at a tier 4 event yet. He's definitely come very, very close. Dan Runkowski, top 8 at Worlds. Was it the first Worlds? Was it San Jose?
And a Pro Tour as well.
And then top 8 at Pro Tour as well. Lucas Oswald as well, someone we have to bring up. And then, I'm like, Noah Bagelman, obviously.
He played at Osaka, right?
Exactly. So, lots of strong players on that side as well.
Nice. I'm going to give a shout out to the PCG Invasion team, which is a team that I have previously been a part of. That's also known as, I guess, the Commonwealth Connection was their previous kind of notoriety, Canadians and Australia, New Zealand kind of group. So Matt Rogers, Nick Butcher, Aaron Shantz was previously part of that group, now gone to the super team. Ooh. And we're going to be pushing this narrative. I'm going to be pushing this narrative. Like, I think the super team are a little bit like heel. I think that's how people are going to see them this weekend. Of like, they've pulled all these players out of their teams. They've kind of formed this like, they're not necessarily the bad guys, but we've been hearing some things.
That's a narrative I only got exposed to since I came to London. Because before that, like, we had a player who would test with us who's also part of the Subi team, but they still test with us. They don't. Like, we trust them to not like leak into like either side. But in terms of just getting games, like, they're getting games on both sides, and like for us at least, it's been quite. What's the opposite of antagonistic? It's been quite and why is
neutral? I don't know, like
comfortable. It's been it's just been nice and casual. I don't know.
I think it just depends.
Depends on the player particularly and how the rest of the team takes it as well. And I guess how that player maybe brought it up to the rest of the team as well.
The thing about Flesh and Blood as well is honestly, like, we going back through the history of Flesh and Blood and Tier 4 events, the first year of Tier 4 events, the first year of the Pro Tour, it was so small and insular, and people kept hidden information, and they didn't, if it was like, I found this thing, but I'm not going to play it at this Pro Quest because I want to, protect it for Pro Tour sort of thing.
Okay, no, at PT New Jersey.
I mean, that just isn't what happened.
I know it isn't, but it is funny. There's a narrative around that too, and I just had to bring it up if you're going to talk about that.
But Yeah, I think there has been this kind of view that in the first year or two that people just, you kept tech, you didn't let it outside of the group or the team, right? And I think more and more this is becoming proven that it's just
bad.
It's just not the way to do it. Like you you show up and you're like, oh, actually this tech that I thought was good, just not as good, or other people have come to it, or like people have come to it and they've also found the counter and like we're actually behind. And I think what's more interesting is this people just be like, that there's players out there who aren't part of these big teams or quote unquote like known teams, and they're going to find stuff and they're going to show up to the calling and try and win a calling with it, and people have done that. Like, so there's not the same, I think. People are just learning there's not the reason to keep things heading back.
I mean, people have top-8 PTs with that. We've had, like, when we talk about top-8 PTs, like, we remember the names that we know are, like, part of teams or other established results. But I think the one example I always like to bring up is Mara Faris at PT Baltimore, right? Made second, not part of any team before that. And then afterwards joins Team Ascent. But before that, she got there on her red line Empress Dromai list all on her own, right? And there are other examples of this in previous PTs. Like, the names escape me, but there are countless examples of people who top-8 tier 4 events and aren't part of established teams. And I think it goes to your point exactly, and what we were talking about earlier, but like inbreeding, it is a very real risk if you just try and stay insular and not test with people outside of it.
Yeah, I agree. What other, maybe just we can just shut up. Team Poland, I'm just going to check this. Team Poland, I think as well is quite interesting. That's Bartosz Zemba we're talking about. I mean, honestly, if you talk about Wolfpacking it up, you talk about the biggest groups in the room. Team Poland. I mean, they're not, I guess, an official team. They show up as the country, right? But there's so many players in that team.
I'm so curious what they're thinking of bringing.
They brought Katsu to a pro tour.
Which is why I was going to bring that up, because we were just right outside this little room building thing they were in. We walked past some European players, and there was a Phi playing against a Florian. And I'm kind of like, ooh, Team Poland does like their ninjas, and they like their Katsu. Like, did they, I don't know, crack Phi? I don't think Phi is that horrendous of a pick. I'm not super convinced, but it's not horrendous.
It's so outside my warehouse of testing that I have no conceivable. I think if you're showing up with it, you found something. It's one of those things where it's like, if someone shows up with Teklo, like if a group showed up with Teklo Vossen, you wouldn't be like, oh, they've just conned themselves into playing this deck. You're like, no, they must have something, because it's just perceived to be that bad, right?
Yeah, you're like, what? Or like, what are you up to? Like, how did you bring this? Like, and then you get a little bit nervous and like, okay, what tech do they have? And I mean, Phi, I think we're going to get into this as we talk about the meta. There is you target Aurora, you target Enigma, or like you need to find a deck that's good into both.
Yeah.
And Phi is, I think, one of those decks that I think I could see being like, he's very good into Enigma, right? He's like, he's super good into Enigma. Yeah. And with the Lynx thing, I don't think he's like good into Aurora, but I could see a build where you're like, you know what, this matchup is playable.
Yeah,
I
maybe
need
something.
Yeah, I need some things to go my way. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Breaking Point or something like comes into the picture. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But you could see that being like, oh, and then I'm comfortable in this, and into Earth Heroes as well. Like, I feel like Phi is probably fine, just because there's so much like consistent damage like on the board without using cards in deck and stuff. It's just, I don't know, I could see that being legit. Let's come back to teams though.
Value Vampires. You want to talk about Value Vampires? Where they're from? Who's in that team? They're international, effectively.
I don't. The names of specific players escape me. I do know they're a solid team.
Yeah.
Do you have more?
No, I don't.
Okay, cool.
And then I think we've kind of covered the teams we're going to talk about, but there was just some non-team people or teams that maybe we hadn't spoken about, but players that I have my eye out for. I mean, Max Klein is a player, doubled like twice, top 8 a PT, finalist. PTLA, I think is one that I'm watching out for. Just it's like, those players who are just putting up consistent results, and even outside of his 2 top 8s, I think a national champion or national finalist, I can't remember if he actually won that year, but has also top 8 at calling. I think there's just those players. I'm watching out for these players as well, who have maybe they're not on these like quote unquote teams that I'm super familiar with, but I do think Max is on a team from what I understand, and maybe a German team, I think. But there's so many players like that I'm just like, keep my eye out for. Any other players for you that you keep your eye out for?
Well, this isn't really a player thing, but it's more of I think a cabal that has formed a little bit, and again touching a little bit on like heroes, but I think there was a bit of a Fang cabal. I heard whisperings and musings of like a group of people that came together to try and work on Fang, to try and crack Fang for this meta. Yeah, which it's not an established team. It's really just people being passionate about Fang and thinking they've like might have found something. So that's another. I think Josh Lau is on that. He was hinting at it in the Card Guys tier list video. He was hinting at Fang like when he was talking about Fang. So I'm kind of like, that is something I like to keep my eye on. I think, I don't know, like maybe they found a way for it to be like the Hatchet Dory of PTLA, where it wasn't really a conversation. She wasn't really in the middle, in the spotlight, leading up to PTLA. It was a lot of KO and a lot of Dromai. But then in the event itself, Hatches Dory, there's 2 in the top 8 suddenly, right? So maybe this Fang Cabal, Fang connection, as you say, maybe
real.
they found something, yeah.
The last one I'll talk about, which is interesting to me, is probably just the UK player base. Very, like, I think a fairly strong region that's maybe not gotten all the respect that they might have deserved. For that, maybe they have.
You think so? I feel like they get a lot of respect.
I think they're quite a vocal bunch about it, though. But I think about, like, you know, even someone like Rob Catton, who's top-aided multiple worlds and a Pro Tour, for instance. I think you've got these players, you know, Matthew Folks, of course. Like, these players have, I think, done a lot in this game. But I think when people talk about Europeans, they don't necessarily talk about, you know, the UK specifically. This is my perception. I think, you know, they talk about it as a collective, and it's like if you go to region, I think it's really interesting when you go to like more countries or region specific within Europe as well.
If you talk about regionality, then I think I see where you're coming from. But I think the whole European player base, I think they have a lot of respect. I mean, the results speak for themselves, right? Arthur Trahey, Matthew Folks, Pablo Pintor, just like all these European players that just show up these events and just slay.
Alexander as well.
Exactly.
Like, it's European. The Europeans have racked up the points so far. Like they're ahead in the tally, that's for sure.
Exactly. I guess. Yeah. Okay. I feel like they have a lot of respect. Yeah.
But I had 2 players in particular I want to shout out, which is Jacob Clemens and Alex Chitu. Alex Clemens, I think, is maybe Jacob Clemens. Sorry.
Yeah, Jacob Clemens.
And
yes.
Alex Chitu. Sorry. Like quite high up there in the World Tour leaderboard. I think World Tour leaderboard is the other thing I'm looking at this weekend to see like who's making moves. We're getting, you know, well into the season now. But they've both been doing a lot of travel around. They've been to
Kobe and Sao Paulo.
Yeah. I think each of them top-aided one of them.
I think Jacob Clemens top-aided Kobe.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, finalist
and
Kobe.
Alex Chitu top-aided Sao Paulo. Yeah. So they've been traveling around, I think, I assume together, and top-aiding these events and playing these events, and now they're on home soil. So Alex Chitu as well is former UK national champion winner. So yeah, just looking out for these players who are currently on a bit of a, like, if you go to the World Tour leaderboard and you look at the players on there, you know, that top 10, the names, you're like, yeah, these are people that I would expect to do well this weekend, right? Like they're on form. You talk about some of the maybe historical players who have done well, or players who are just really strong. Like Pablo Pintor, I think, is, you know, he's not on that list at the moment. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Pablo Pinto put up a top 8 this week. You know, just another top 8, just another day out for Pablo Pinto. But these players who maybe haven't had the tier 4 top 8, but are showing up to these events, they've got the momentum, they've got the form behind them, and I think that's what's interesting to me. So
they're seasoned and very well practiced at this point from all the traveling they've been doing. Speaking of World Tour, this is the first tier 4 event of 2025, which I think is something that
the Player of the Year race.
And also just in general for like the competitive scene, right? Like, you know, we've had the past few months, there's been a bunch of callings, a bunch of battle hardens, a bunch of meta shifts, new set came out, Viserai LL'd, things like that. But now we're at the first tier 4 event of 2025. And I think that's part of the narrative as well that we haven't quite touched on yet. I'm so looking forward to it. I don't know why Japan just feels so far away, and it is right?
that,
yeah. And it was like, it's been like 6 months since we had a tier 4 event. I'm like itching, and I'm so excited to just see a proper international event happen again.
Yeah, me too. Let's get into meta prediction. I want to talk heroes. I want to talk, you know, the decks, and we've talked players. Let's just bang straight into it. Aurora. It's going to be the most played deck tomorrow when we get into things. I don't think there's any way that doesn't eventuate. I can't. So like, if I go back to Worlds Barcelona, I was like, oh yeah, Dromai's gonna be the most played deck, but I wouldn't have like bet money on it, right? And it ended up being
Icelander, which was surprising. I was surprised by that.
Which was surprised, and it was the narrative. The week of the narrative really flipped, I think. But it just isn't the case here. There's just a clear number one deck to beat, which is Aurora or play. We've been talking, and we think, well, I guess the question I'll throw it to you, what's the second most played deck tomorrow?
Enigma.
How confident are you that Enigma's the second most played deck tomorrow?
So I would say I'm quite confident. I'll put like an 80% confidence. Okay. But part of that thing is not just her raw power level. Part of that is that we are in Europe. And I think Europe does like their illusionists. Like they are less of an aggro-leaning region, like compared to like Asia, for example. And I mean, just yeah, they do like the grindy, slower, control-y type stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of like Arthur Trujillo with Dromai, right? Winning the first PT of 2024. Yeah, I think they do like that.
Yeah, I've been trying to compare it to previous Pro Tours, and we did a bit of comparisons a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Lexi and Aurora, of course.
This is Baltimore. Just saying, this is PT Baltimore.
But my question keeps coming, like, what is the Ultim if that's the case? Like, what is Ultim?
Yeah, so are we moving to third, fourth, and fifth? I guess you...
No. Because what I guess I'm getting at when it comes to Enigma, right, is that, like, I don't think I can compare it to... I'm not finding a good comparison, I think. Because if I take Baltimore, it was Lexi...
Dromai.
No, then Ultim.
Oh, you mean like second most... That's what you mean.
Yeah. So, and Ultim wins that event. And I just can't quite... I can't find the direct link I'm necessarily looking for to give me the confidence of Enigma being the second most played deck if I try and compare it to something. But the one I was comparing it to in my head was actually Worlds Barcelona, where I think Enigma is Icelander-like in many ways, honestly, to me, in terms of like, it's just a good, really well-rounded deck. It has like game into everything. It's not a massive dog into anything necessarily, and you can build it. You can kind of slant it in a few different directions. So it kind of more speaks to me on that Icelander standpoint, and that's what gives me the confidence. Not that direction, but just in general, that kind of view that I think Enigma is just so strong, it's so powerful, and you can build and lean into your Aurora matchup, maybe what you're expecting to be third, fourth, fifth, which we'll talk to, that I think it just will be the single most played deck. I think so many people are going to decide to play it. It just is that strong.
And you also just get free wins. Like there are some draws that no deck can beat.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you just transcend on turn one, and then you
do double mirror
guy. Yeah,
double mirror guy.
Or you just every turn you're like, yeah, I have a defense reaction, another block card, block with 2 cards, send a Phantasmaclasm, block with 1 card, send make an aura, send that, and then send my CNC to disrupt you. Oh, now here's a Mirage. Like it's just so powerful. If I had to say to you, because we've been talking about this week on week, percentage of Aurora showing up tomorrow, because we're going to try and put percentage on number 1, number 2, but then we'll talk about what we think is going to be third, fourth, fifth most played. We won't talk about percentages there. Aurora, Enigma, what percentage of the field tomorrow?
So last week, at least the past couple of weeks, I was saying Aurora is 18 to 23%.
Yeah,
I'm going to go up a little bit, but I'm still. I don't think it's reaching 30. Like actually, I just think about just the raw number of heroes that we have in the game now, and the number of people that just don't want to play either the deck that's being targeted, which is Aurora, or don't want to play the aggro deck. I still think, I don't think I'm too, like I'm leaning towards 20 to 25, but I just, from what I know about the player base, it's always been lower than what we expect. You know what? I'm just going to stick to my guns. I'm just going to say 18 to 23. I'm sticking to 18 to 23.
I need a number. You got to give me a number.
A number? Okay, fine. Let's go with 23.
Oh, so you went for the high end?
Yes.
All right.
I'm saying, I'm like, okay, this is like Lexia Baltimore. I'm sticking, Lexia Baltimore is 23%, and I think it's going to be that or lower. Maybe 22 to 23. Come on, give me 1% range.
All right, 22 to 23.
22 to 23. That's my prediction.
I'm going to say 25.5% of the field.
So 25 to 26, put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I've been saying, I think 25 to 30 is not out of this world. And I think actually on form, it should be closer to 30. But I think given all the things you just said, I completely agree. Like how many people actually want to play the deck, how many people are trying to beat it. We're going to talk about traps. People are going to trick themselves into playing decks they should not be playing this weekend, where they should just be playing Aurora. Like they had tested it and they should have just registered Aurora, and they're going to register, insert terrible choice here, and ruin their weekend. They're going to try and like be the dream, right? Like we're going to chase the dream. We're going to register whatever. Like
I mean, Shoma's story of winning a PT with Azuri probably inspired a bunch of people. And like, no, we found the Azuri, and it's not the Azuri.
People are looking for it, definitely. So
it's funny. You went for the lower end of your range, and I went for the high end of my range. So we kind of had almost the same.
Yeah. Makes sense. How much Enigma?
Ooh, I think it's gonna be a significant drop off. I think, okay, so I'm gonna say 15 to 18%, with probably, let's say I'm gonna go with 15%.
Yeah, I think 14. I'm in the same area. Yeah, I think it's gonna be 14%, 14 to 15%. So.
Okay, now we get into really murky territory.
Yeah.
Decks 3, 4, and 5.
It's so interesting.
It's so weird. Okay, I think we should start with Zen.
Okay, one thing I want to say is, one thing I think is interesting is, there's a real chance that the third most played deck is not more than 10%. Like I think it could be single digit. Like I think that's a real reality, which is crazy. I don't think it'll come to fruition. I think the third most played deck will be around 10 to 12%. But there's a world where it's 9%, and that's crazy.
I could see that absolutely, because Aurora and Enigma are just it does feel like there's a gap in power level between Aurora and Enigma and like the rest of the field, or like the next best thing. I will say though, I don't think the gap is as big. Like the gap does keep getting smaller and smaller as Flesh and Blood matters, as we progress through matters. You know, like the gap between Lexi and like the next best deck was high. The gap between Aurora and Enigma and like the next best decks aren't as high. It is still, there's a gap, but it's not like, you know, that level of, okay, wait, I'm literally just getting completely outvalued.
One thing I would say is I think the gap is smaller between the second, third most played deck, the second, third best decks, and like the fourth, fifth, sixth best decks. Because like in my view, like it sounds like we might have a slightly different view. Like I think the gap between like Lexi, Joromai, and Ultim, for instance, in that meta was not huge. Like I think Lexi was the best deck, but I don't actually think it was by that much. Whereas I think the gap between like Ultim and Joromai and the other decks that you could play, which I honestly can't remember what else was really in that format, Briar, stuff like that.
Icelander was around.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think that gap's way bigger.
Sure.
I think that gap's way bigger. Whereas I think that gap has significantly shrunk. So why don't we put our cards on the table in terms of the decks, the heroes we're going to just kind of debate between third to fifth. So
start with Zen, I think. Yep.
Yeah, so Zen Nu is in the debate. It's in the debate because like, it's been well represented at events leading up to this.
That's the only reason it's in the debate, I think. Just the historical, like the recent history of Nu's performance. Also, I mean, we've been talking about calling Kobe and calling Sao Paulo. There was a Nu in top 8 of each of them.
Yep.
Granted, they were Jacob Clements and Michael Hamilton, which are like insane players. So I don't know how much stock you want to give to that, like the player, rather than the deck.
We'll put it on the table.
For that reason, it is in the conversation. But yeah.
Florian, winner of
Kobe.
Yep.
Florian's in it.
I think it's going to be in the conversation. And then we go to based on representation. I mean, I think that's what's hard. Like,
if we're going based on representation, Syndra.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, calling Kobe and Sao Paulo, there was a lot of... Syndra was in top 3, I believe. So Sao Paulo, at least, it definitely was. I think Kobe was as well. I don't know why. Like, no one converted to day 2. Or it was a terrible conversion to day 2, but she is there. And if you think about Enigma, I mean, kind of...
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. People... could be a trap. Actually, yeah.
Syndra should be on a trap list.
Might be one of the traps. But yeah, I think she's in the conversation as well.
Is there any other heroes you want to add to this list? Like, I'm going to add Arachne Slip of the Cracks to this list that I think we should discuss of the top 5 most played decks. Okay,
I mean, yeah, I think we're probably worth discussing. I feel like I think it's in a dark horse category. I just don't see the representation being high enough to beat out like Zen in particular. I would still think it's probably more Syndras than Slippy. I don't agree with that, but I do think
I'm not so sure.
And I think Florian, like I do feel like Florian and Zen are certainly going to be like more than Slippy. But yeah, yes, we should discuss it. Yes.
Let's go then. So
let's start with Zen.
Okay.
I think Zen's going to be third most played deck. Like, I don't see something else being higher than Zen, given that... Okay.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you know anyone playing Zen?
In my team, in my testing group, no, but I think there is one person on the Runaways playing Zen.
I don't know anyone playing Zen. I really am not certain that Zen is going to be the third most played deck, whereas 2 weeks ago I would have been absolutely locked that it was the third most played deck.
Representation at Kobe and Sao Paulo, do you remember? I think Zen was
in the top 4.
In the top 4. So going based off, I think, okay, so go into Enigma, and you get to play a game into Aurora. Like, I'm walking back what I said a couple of weeks ago.
You told me it was good into Aurora.
Yes. A week or 2 ago, I was like, oh, Zen's favored into Aurora, right? And then I played that matchup a bit more. I'm like, okay, Zen is not favored into Aurora. Walk that back. All right, we learned. But it is still a game to be played. It's not... You're not getting dog walked by Aurora. And then into the rest of the field, you kind of... This part is still true, which I do think you're in the 45 to 55 into everything else. And I think some players, especially at the PT level, just like being in that position.
Yeah.
It's like the KO. It's very similar to the KO of like PTLA.
If you're watching this weekend and watching this PT, like this PT could throw some insane surprises in terms of representation. Like I agree. I think let's settle. I think Zen third most played deck, but I think there's a very real possibility that it's the 5th or 6th most played deck.
I can see that.
Crazy.
Florian. Okay, I just move on to Florian.
Yeah.
I think Florian.
I think it's the 4th most played.
And I think what you were bringing up just now about Zen potentially being 5th or 6th, I think if Zen isn't 3rd, I think my next pick would be Florian to be 3rd.
Yeah.
So to me, like Florian feels like the 4th. I'm probably okay to lock Florian as like 4th most played.
Yeah.
4th most played deck, which is. I don't know, seems a little strange. For me personally, because I think I've been pretty vocal about this, I don't really believe in that deck.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Florian?
I think it's pretty reasonable. I think it's similar to Zen in that it's like got a lot of like 45 to 55 matchups. And I think people who are going to play Florian like to play games of Flesh and Blood, because I think that's what you get to do with Florian. It's quite an interesting hero to play, I think. You're working towards like this position in the game where you get to turn your hero ability on, then you play this value kind of game. You've got some really interesting channel, whatever channel you're playing, whether it's Mount or Millennium Tree, like in terms of like the setup turns you can build to, and then start to push value that way. So I think it's a really interesting and it feels great to play, and that's why I think people will play it.
Yeah, I could see it. I think a few weeks ago we spoke about Florian into Aurora, and I think back then, if I remember correctly, I think your stance was you think Florian's like good into Aurora or like favored into Aurora. Do you still feel that way?
I think my stance with him was that that's why people were playing it and that it was somewhat favored. I think on the whole it's not favored, honestly, but I think that people will come to strategies and plans where they're going to feel 55 to 60. Whether that's reality, I'm not so sure. I think it sits somewhere between 40 to 55 in one or other direction.
Yeah, I'm firmly in the, I think it's even. Like, I think from the games I've seen, it does feel like kind of a coin flip, but not in a coin flip in that it's very variance based. It just feels like it's even.
Yeah.
And if I had to pick a favorite,
the games feel really close.
Exactly. Yeah. And if I had to pick a favorite, I would actually pick Aurora. So I'm similar to you, where it's the 40-55, but it's, I don't know, 48-50 for Florian, which is a fine place to be if you can solve the Enigma thing. And that's the interesting conversation, I think. Yeah. What tech do you think Florians are bringing for Enigma? Something I've been seeing recently. Channel Mount Heroic, you're talking about the different channels. Both channels are very good into Enigma. Yeah. Right? You send a rune chant for 4, that's clearing something.
That's so good.
Or you CMH and you're swarming Gloomveil, Rune Rage just swarm them, and that's also really good. So
yeah,
I mean, maybe we see both.
We see Summer's Fall is really good. I think just higher amounts of Earth in general.
Natural go again.
Yeah, natural go against a Rune Ridge swarms, swarming Gloomveils, etc. Swarming Gloomveil when you're like in the end game turned on is like insane. Like
the turns where they just go Arcane Seeds, and then they go like seeds, Grasp and Arcane Seeds Gloomveil. You're like, wait, what is happening? Yeah. How is your 3-card hand dealing me so much damage?
It's insane. So yeah, I think that's probably my view. So we've got fifth. We're up to 5th.
This one's so tough.
Because honestly, I think Florian and Zen are probably like somewhere in like the 8 to 12% played range, maybe even as low as 7%. This next hero could be, 6-7% as well. Oh. I think it has to be.
I think I know what's 5th, which is funny, and I'm going to say this name, and we both are so low on this hero right now, but I think 5th, or at least, actually, it might not even be 5th, it could be 3rd or 4th, new.
Yeah, I think it's new as well.
It's just new, right? For some reason.
Yeah. I think new could be as high as 4th. But I just think, from my understanding and what I'm like, I think hearing from players and people who've traditionally played new is that they're just so low on it. Like, I think as well, the Assassin players are going to be split on playing like Slippy and new, I think. And I actually think combined, Slippy and new, I think would probably be the like 4th most played deck, I think.
I could see it being
maybe even higher. 3rd, maybe even 30. But I think a lot of people who are playing Slippy were the new players. So I think there's a bit of transition over, I think, to a degree. So yeah, I think new's 5th most played, but I actually this is why I wanted to put Slippy in that category. I actually think it could be Arachne Slip Through the Cracks being 5th most played deck this weekend. So that's why I wanted to put in there. So yeah, I think probably the only deck we haven't spoken about that's had pretty good representation is actually Prism. These events. We haven't spoken about Prism. I think that's probably one that we didn't put on the table just there at the start, but I think that's probably the one I could see.
Yeah, I don't see a representation being that high, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is a Prism that is doing fairly well in the tournament. I guess the way I'd put it. I'm still not convinced about the Enigma matchup. And the Aurora matchup is still like, I would give the favor to Prism, but not by that much. Yeah, not by that much.
Yeah, and you have some pretty bad matchups. So
exactly. I want to come back to New for a little bit. I do wonder, so something that I've been experimenting with, something that I brought up, and I think this is probably firmly in the Dark Horse category, but also related to Slippy doing well. I think there is a build of New that is a bit underexplored.
Yeah.
Mark New, which is something that I've been playing around with. You get to have Mistblade in the side, and you get to side up on blues for like when you're playing against like Enigma or whatever, or like if there's a random Guardian that shows up.
Yeah.
Well, any matchup you need to go again, or you're playing your opponent's blues, you play the Mistblade side of it.
Yeah.
And you have that, but into Aurora, you side down on blues, and you play the Mark stuff, and you get to bonds them multiple times a game. And I have found that strategy to be, in my opinion, more effective than the 12 defense reaction new that we've been seeing.
Yeah.
Because that just gets kind of completely hosed by Exude Confidence. And it doesn't allow you to take pivot turns. Because if you try and take damage to send a bonds with that deck, they're just going to block you out, and then they just like fold a hand.
Yeah.
And then you'll freely give tempo back to them because you're going to draw 2 defense reactions.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit high on this build. I think it's a bit underexplored, and I hope someone shows up with it. With like a dual Hunter's Clave Flick Knives new, where you play like Slippy into aggro decks, but you still have the new stuff. You still have Siren's Call and the Mystic Reacts into like the other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the greatest advantage is that you get to send bonds multiple times a game. Like Slippy and Erect and Marinette, I guess Marinette's not really in the conversation, but Slippy struggles with sending bonds multiple times a game because your equipments are like one-time uses. But with the Mystic Reacts, you get to do it like multiple times.
Yeah, it's really good.
And they don't even know it's coming sometimes, so you take up the mantle. Yeah, exactly.
Man, what a card. No,
it's like, you send like Infiltrate and suddenly it's like, oh, this is the bonds, by the way, and then they're not prepared. So they might be holding 2 of like E-Strikes, and you just get both of them.
I think you could convince me to play this deck like Mark knew at ProQuest, to be honest. Like, I actually think it's quite an interesting concept. I think it would require, for me to play this, I think it would require something from Aurora to be hit in the next banner spin announcement, but I actually think it's really interesting. I have enjoyed playing Marionette, but I don't enjoy playing Marionette into Aurora ever.
Fair enough.
I think one thing I wanted to put, we're going to talk traps soon, but I think I would actually put playing too many defense reactions in the traps. People are just getting better at playing this game and understanding how to play tempo and how to like work out what you should do in certain situations. And a lot of the time it's like, I'm just going to give you a 5-card hand here because I know I'm looking at your graveyard. I've seen, there's 1 Shelter, there's 1 Fate Foreseen here, there's 2 Sink Belows, and there's that all you got. I'm like, so you're on minimum 12 D-Reacts. Yeah, I'm okay to give you a 5-card hand because really that's a 3-card hand when you have tempo. And I'm going to take that time so I'm going to assume you have 3 cards, so it's like 12 damage as opposed to maybe like 20 damage. I can afford to set up a few things on that. I'm going to take the risk. And I think that's the reality we live in, and I think people are going to do that. And that's actually why decks like Florian are interesting to me, because I think Florian is a hero with these builds that can operate from 1 card to 5 cards.
And that's exactly why my opinion on the Zen Aurora matchup has flipped.
Yeah.
I used to be like, Zen's good, but then I think to your point, Auroras are getting better and they're adapting. And now the Zen's like, I wax on, waxed off you, I natty Zen stated you, and my chest is still up. Oh yeah, I'm so up. And Aurora's like, okay, I'll block out while your Zen stays on the field. And then the Zen's looking at the hand with like a yellow wax on and a sink below, and then they're like, okay, I guess I'm converting my hand to like 7 damage because I'm holding this D-Reacts. And Aurora's like, cool, block out again until your Zen state's gone. I'm gonna just give you 2 cards and still send 3 into your whatever.
And meanwhile they're doing that, they're crafting their arsenal. They're like, I'm gonna set up this like Skyward Serenade or this Arc Lightning, or find the card that I want to set up. It's so good.
And then it's like your Zen state did nothing for you because your deck is built in a way to not capitalize on tempo. And again, this also comes back to a 12D React new build where you're like, I've got a live Bonds of Agony. And you send it, and Aurora's just like, okay, fold my entire hand. And you draw that all you got in your Fate Foreseen, and you're like, okay, I can't do anything with this tempo.
I think that all you got is a card that, I think some from the neutrals, you might even get, I don't know, maybe if we asked like a Brian or a Sam, I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, that all you got, what an interesting card for this weekend. But I'm like, I think that all you got is it's going to be one of the most disappointing cards of this weekend. I think people are going to play it and find that it's not actually that good.
It's been underwhelming for sure. Yeah. I'm with you on that one. Mostly because it says defense reaction in the type line, and you already are running so many others.
And against good players, like you're just like, like the way that you've blocked the first chain link, like I just have to read that you just have there you go here. I'm just not going to swing my Starfall. Like it's not that hard. And then I'm going to come in with another 4 attack and sit on this chain link and threaten a Channel Lightning Valley or something, and you can't block it because instead of playing like a 0 for 4 or a card that's a bit more relevant in your deck, you've got a 0 for 3 defense reaction.
And also, what is that defense reaction drawing you? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like because your deck's so bad at like converting bigger hands, it's kind of just like what are you doing with this card advantage? It's strange.
Let's talk Dark Horses. Let's get into it. We need to rip through some of these. Let's start with the Reckoning Tip to the Cracks, because I was saying I could see that being 5th most played deck. I think it's the deck that's had the most momentum over the last 2 weeks in terms of rising up, in terms of a deck that could show up this weekend and have a real impact. The view is that Slips Through the Cracks obviously really strong into Enigma. I think a really good matchup to Enigma. View is that pretty good matchup into, I think it depends who you ask. I think somewhere from a decent, like maybe slightly unfavored into Aurora to really well positioned, like a 60%er into Aurora, I think is what I'm hearing.
I would put it in the 40 to 50 range into Aurora. I think you are unfavored into Aurora, but you are way more favored into Enigma than you are unfavored into Aurora, which I think makes it a viable pick. It actually reminds me a little bit, like we brought up Fi. It reminds me a little bit of like Fi's matchup spread into at least the 2 top decks, where you're like very favored into Enigma, and then you're like the slight underdog into Aurora. Kind of, it's like similar in that space.
It's occupying that space.
Exactly. Slip to Cracks. I actually want to shout out Chris Iali's build. I don't know whether you tuned into like the AG Open series that they have. Yeah, well, so Chris Iali was playing Slip to the Cracks.
Yeah.
I don't remember if he won that event, but he had a very interesting equipment loadout, which I think was very cool. It was Redback Shroud on the chest with Mask of Perdition in the headpiece.
That's cool.
And I was just talking about how Slippy Marinette struggle with turning on bonds.
Not
with that equipment loadout, you are turning on bonds very, like, I think a lot of people caught on against Slippy that if you're just presenting Tunic and like Providence or the Arachne helmet, that when they send bonds at you, you can sometimes just say no blocks.
Yeah.
And they'll just be like, okay, cool, fine, take one. Like they're trying to bait you into blocking 6.
Yeah.
But when they have that equipment loadout, you kind of have to block 6
it's on
now.
the table.
Exactly. So I kind of really like that equipment loadout, and I haven't tested too much with that side of it. It was very recent. That stream was very recent. I think that tech was a little bit fresh. So I don't know. Like maybe the raw match was going to just a slightly bit better from that.
I could see it. I think that's the thing is like Slip Through the Cracks is a pretty underexplored hero, I think. You know, obviously we saw it show up in one of the first callings in Christchurch, do well, and I think obviously, you know, people were working on it, but I think people abandoned it pretty quickly, or it hasn't quite had the same level of players maybe backing it and testing it out, and it's an interesting hero.
It was because of the representation of Nu, right, at the time.
Yeah, I don't even think that new matchup is actually that bad. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
And Nu is going lower, so it just kind of just props up Slippy a little bit.
Yeah.
Like his sort of, in a sense, inbuilt balancing mechanism, if you will, was the presence of the other assassins. But the other assassins are like, we're checking out this meta, man. We don't do Enigma and Aurora. We can't build to beat both.
Yeah.
We can build to beat one, but not both. So Slippy's like, hey, maybe it's my time, because I can be built to like be fine into both.
Yeah, one thing I would love to just rip through some of these heroes quickly, but one thing I do just want to say, this isn't Slippy related, but I think is a reference to picking it, because I'm really, I don't say passionate. I mean, I am. I think you've really got to pick. I love metagaming. Like I think you've got to pick the right deck for the event and know how to metagame. But it's not just it's not just like, I'm going to pick this hero because I think it's well positioned in terms of its matchups. You've also got to understand what's happening in a more macro lens of the metagame. And we're talking a lot about spread representation. I think if you take a deck that has potentially a really nice spread into the top 2, like even if it's like you're 45 to 50 into number 1 or 2, and then you're like heavily favored into the other one, I don't actually think this is the best meta to do that, because there's a real spread through 3, 4, 5, 6 and beyond. It's really hard to know what you might play into. So you might play into those top 2 decks. We're saying combined, maybe 35 to 40% of the time. That's not enough to get you to a top 8 of a Pro Tour, right? So I think you actually need a nice spread, and this is why I'm going to keep banging on. This is why I would play Enigma, because you just have this good spread. This is why I think Aurora and Enigma are going to have the success this weekend, because I think if you're playing these decks to target them, you're going to run into something else like on our list that we're about to talk about, like a Vincent, Azalea, a Yao, a Dash, or a Kano, and have a bad time. So I just wanted to put that out there before we rip into some of these heroes.
The fundamental strength of the deck is kind of what it comes down to,
Yeah.
right? Can you beat like the rest? Like, I don't know, so you face someone like the Fang Cabal or something, and you're playing you're playing your Nu into like a Fang, and it's like, okay, wait, this matchup is, not that bad for Nu, but you're still unfavored. And it's suddenly like, wait, I wasn't expecting this. I built my deck to beat the other 2, and then suddenly there's the other 60% of the field.
Yeah, or you play Fang and you rock into Yao.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's talk Vincent quickly.
Let's go Vincent. Okay, so I mean, I'm still higher on Vincent than you are, for sure.
For sure.
I think into the top 2 decks,
Almost anyone is.
Yeah, I think into the top 2 decks, Vincent is still in a fine position, but I think it again is the rest of the field. Again, I'm not entirely convinced about Vincent's spread into like the random Earth hero or something.
It has the problem we just spoke about, I think, a little bit.
Exactly. I mean, she does have game though. I mean, I feel like
She's a proactive hero, so
people might overestimate how easily you can like fatigue Vincent, like with the floor and just like, I'm just gonna block out
people
everything.
definitely do.
And then it's like, okay, Vincent's like, here's triple rune gate. You just took 20 and you blocked out, and it's like, okay, I'll just do it one more time and then you're dead. So yeah, I mean, I think the deck has legs is very difficult to play though, and you need this. It needs to be expertly piloted, and you also need some variance to go your way. That's the other thing. It's like you're like sort of. I think I would give a slight edge to Vincent into Aurora, but you do need stuff to go your way. And there's some games where the deck
you're just gonna lose.
Yeah, there's some games the deck tells you don't get to win this game.
You've been hearing a few things about Azalea. I think my problem with Azalea as maybe a dark horse is I just don't like. I think again, things having to go right. You have to have like everything go right to beat the top 2 decks, I think, right now. So I'm not seeing it, but I think you've been hearing a few things maybe.
I've heard some buzz on Azalea, but I'm with you. I would put Azalea in the dark horse, but also the trap category. Yeah. She's like in both categories. But yeah, if your draws line up, yes, I think you're good into Aurora and Enigma if your draws line up properly. But you're gonna have games where you're like, okay, cool, I got the tempo. Like my Rindle Ledger mattered, which sometimes it doesn't. But like my hamstring shot matters. Hamstring shot into Aurora is very good.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, cool, that thing mattered. Okay, cool, I've got the tempo, and then you draw 3 arrows. And you're like, like, oh, okay, cool. Like this just, like the deck just told you no.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And like the decks are so powerful at 1 and 2, Aurora and Enigma, that like if you have those off turns, like they're going to punish you so hard for it.
Exactly. So I'm just like, yeah, it's like a dark horse. I've been hearing some buzz about it, but I'm not confident on it, which is why I also think it's a trap.
Yeah.
Jarl.
I'll talk a little bit
Your
about
turn.
Jarl.
Talk about Jarl.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with Jarl recently. I think, you've got I think you have a really good matchup into Aurora. I shared my deck list on the Patreon, but I think if you're not playing Arctic Incarceration, minimum, but also I think you should probably just play Frostfang at the moment. But I think minimum Arctic Incarceration, you're doing yourself a disservice in this meta.
Frostfang Pummel, I love that line so much.
Dude, it's so nice. But I think, the CYB Jarl has been the more prevalent. It's one battle hardened. I personally don't think much of that deck. I don't think it's a good meta position. But overall, I think Jarl doesn't have a great meta position. But we did speak about try and take yourself on, like, spread the field, right? If you have a good matchup into the most played deck and you have a reasonable matchup into the rest of the field, might be okay. The problem is Enigma is not a good matchup for you. Florian is like a tough matchup for you. I think depending. I think it depends on the build. Yeah. I think it can be okay to tough, but I think people are going to show up with really robust Florian lists. I think, and probably going to play 6 channels, which is tough for you.
I suppose if it's if you're on aggro Jarl and the Florian's also like aggressively slant, I could see that being tough for you.
Yeah, but they also have, I think, better setup than you. So, but anyway, I also think, then you've got to worry about like some of the other decks around that may not, but I think you do beat random stuff like Fang, Azalea. I think Vincent's really good for you. Like, I think you're going to beat these decks. So I don't think Jarl is the worst choice. Like, I wouldn't put it in a trap choice, I think, but it probably is. Like, I don't think you should. I can see why people might. I think it's a better pick than some of the other heroes we don't have in the trap position, for instance. I don't think Jarl is a worse pick than Nu, for instance, honestly.
Okay. Would you say it's a worse pick than Zen?
Yeah, I think so. Only ever so slightly.
Okay.
So slightly.
And I think probably, based on what you were saying, definitely a worse pick than Florian.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a worse pick than Florian. Yeah.
Sounds good. Next, also your turn. Talk to us about Dash. Also, which version of Dash?
Dash.io, I think.
Dash.io?
Yeah. I think what's interesting about Dash.io, and we saw it top 8, I think it was the Battle Hardened in Sao Paulo, is I think if you just play this clean, aggressive IO deck, I think you are like...
Favorite into Aurora. I would give the edge to Aurora.
I think it probably is. It's something like, it's like Slippy. I think, sorry, not Slippy, what we're talking about before, for Vince. I think it's borderline, I think. And I think depending on what Enigma list people show up with, I think, their matchup is winnable. And I think that you have an aggressive, like, explosive draw enough that you can just run hot and beat a lot of other things in the format, but you do need things to go your way. And like, if you just pair into a Fang, for instance, or a deck that has a bunch of 3 blocks, I personally have not seen people work out how they're going to beat Fatigue, I think, without high octane. Florian is so bad for you. I don't think you can win that matchup.
Yeah, I don't think you win that. I think it's the way Zens are built right now. They're like wax on wax off. That also seems really hard. That's the problem. I think Dio for me is the potential like Uzuri of the meta, where you're like potentially you could maybe be fine into the top 2 decks.
Yeah. But we're not in an Amsterdam.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot more spread.
It's a lot more spread. And in the other decks, it's really bad. Like the Florian and the Zens, I'm just like, that just sounds like nightmare matchups.
It is, yeah. So anyway, maybe similar to, honestly, maybe a little bit similar to, worse than Slippy, maybe in that regard. So let's talk about Kano.
Something else has been causing a lot of buzz. I think the way Enigmas are built these days, I've been watching some Kano Enigma games, and that matchup seems miserable for Enigma, actually. If the Enigma doesn't present AB3, and a lot of them are cutting it, and also, even if they present AB3, if the deck isn't putting on the pressure, the Kano is just setting up potions and like clearing your board because they're Waning Moon in your turn, and like you played your thing, and after they just Waning Moon it away, and after like cool pass, and the whole time they're setting up potions, and your deck isn't putting the pressure that it used to put, because it did cut a bunch of the auras, and now it's just like, okay, and then you just get blown up when they pop all their potions. And it's just, that matchup seems really bad for Enigma these days. And then into Aurora, so it's bad for Kano in my opinion, if bad. The Aurora presents Shock Charmers. And
I agree.
At least all the Auroras I know are still on Shock Charmers, but that's because I test with people who also test with Margin Bay and Peter Budensik. So they respect the Kano, we play those games with and without Shock Charmers, and you need the Shock Charmers.
Definitely.
But I think when we were talking earlier, you mentioned you think some Auroras are cutting Shock Charmers?
I think people might, I think people might think that Kano is just not going to show up and take the gamble of I'm going to use this slot for an extra piece of equipment for the mirror or a different plan I have into maybe an Enigma or something. People weren't playing Tunic, for instance. People were cutting Tunic. So it's well, if I want Tunic into Enigma, then I'm going to play Tunic, but I'm not going to play Shock Charmers. I think people will come to that. Some people will come to that decision, I think. So
we've been there before. That's the perfect environment for a Kano to show up. I mean, the team event, right? Battle Hard in Milwaukee. there was a team event and there was a Kano doing really, really well, blazing for lethal. Yeah, it was like doing really well and just blowing people up because he just wasn't respecting it. And the Enigma matchup is good now. And I think Kano, unlike the Vincets, the Dios that we were talking about earlier, actually has a very good spread into the rest of the field. You Kano into like a Zen, you Kano into a Florian, you Kano into like a Fang. It's a free win. It's like, it's not just you're like favored. No, it's like the opponent just loses on the. It's like a lunch matchup for the opponent for a lot of those.
I think this weekend is a real reasonable gamble to take on Kano. Like if like you say, if Enigmas are not playing AB3, I think I'm there on that. I mostly agree with that. Like AB2, I think it's a game, but I think AB1 is not. Like I've played that matchup. It's not
horrendous.
Good, and that's without good experienced Kanos maybe initially being on some different strategies now as well. So I think if you're not on AB3, if then Shock Charmers are being cut, I honestly think if they present Shock Charmers in AB3 and they're playing like the 7 to 9 blues that people are playing, I think that matchup is like absolutely miserable for Kano. Though.
It's bad. I put it like 35. Like Kano needs to roll real hard. Like get their potions early.
But I think if they don't present Shock Charmers, like that deck is. Aurora is not as aggressive as Fire was. It's not as explosive as these decks in the past have been, where they've been like, actually, we just don't need to worry about AB. Like, we're just going to kill the Kano. Like, they have 3 turns of the dead. Aurora can't do quite that amount of damage. Kano can block out for a couple of turns
and set up the potions and then just blow you up.
Yeah, or just find a spot to just kill you. Just be like, oh, actually, I've drawn well here. Like, I've got a Kindle line here, this, and like I'm just going to kill you. I got you down to 34. Now I'm going to kill you. So
yeah, if you don't have Shock Charmers, if you don't, that can just happen. And Aurora is just a little bit more bricky compared to like the Fires of the past kind of thing. Like it's just like Aurora gets like 1 brick in that game, and then okay, cool, you just got blown up. Like as in you just got 1 extra setup turn because you bricked, and then now you get blown up. So I think Kano's a very real dark horse. I think particularly because of the rest of the spread. We keep talking about that where you don't want to just be good into top 2 decks, or if you're going into one and not so good into the other, you have to make sure what does the rest of your spread looks like. And I think Kano, out of all the heroes we've spoken about so far in the Dark Horse category, they even compared like Slippy, where Slippy into an Earth hero is a little bit rough. You don't really want to be on the Slippy side. Kano into pretty much anything else out of the top 2. You're chilling. It's really good for you. Except like Vincent. Vincent is favored into Kano. That's because they like Spell Void 4 AB3 and you're like, this is terrible.
Same with Levia. All right, traps. Let's finish off traps. We've spoken about a couple already, so let's rip through those. Azalea, I think probably a trap.
There's trap. Guardian.
I spoke to Jarl. I might be on the side of it's maybe not a trap. I don't
specifically Jarl, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Victor's a trap?
Yeah, definitely. But let's talk about these. Let's talk about these other 2 decks quickly, because then I have a thesis. So as to why I think Jarl might still be sitting in that trap category. Fang, we've heard about the Fang Cabal you speak about. To me, it's a cope. The Aurora matchup, it's not good. It's not a good.
Unless they found something, which I find hard to believe, because like I think it sounds like you have experimented too. I've experimented. I couldn't find it, but I mean maybe someone's found it. I mean, again, people didn't really expect Hatchadori until she showed up to PT LA, right? So I don't know.
But that still didn't have a good Dromai matchup. Hatchadori didn't have a good matchup into Dromai. So, like, it's not like people figured out something against one of the top 2 decks of PTLA, for instance. It's just they figured out, like, the KO matchup
was very good.
It was very good, yeah.
And then they played Dawnblade in the side for Dromai to, like, maybe make that okay. Yeah. And it was, I think what I heard, the narrative was, into a bad Dromai, you can win.
So I'm just like, I don't know. I don't get it.
And then Nu, I think, is the other trap. But I think I will asterisk it, caveated. I think the 12D react Nu, in my opinion, isn't ideal. Particularly because I think Auroras are adapting. Jacob Clemens and Michael Hamilton did really well at calling Kobe and Sao Paulo, respectively, on the 12D React Nu into Auroras that I think weren't prepared for it yet. But I think at this PT, I think they'll be prepared for it, and I think Nu is just okay into that. I'd like to see a more aggressive Nu. I think an aggressively slanted Nu is in the Dark Horse category rather than a trap category.
That's fair. I also think Mystic Heroes are so powerful that there's they should always be viable, I think, right? So
thesis.
My thesis is that the reason Jarl still fits into this category and Nu in totality still fits into this category is I think that the trap might be just not playing Aurora or Enigma. The field is going to be so spread, like we spoke about. There's more heroes than there's ever been in this game. We're talking about Florian, we're talking about Slippy, we're talking about all these things that I think if your trap might just be, I tested Aurora, but I'm now going to switch to Slippy for like a matchup better into X or whatever. You should probably just play Aurora, I think. Or I'm going to play this deck that has maybe a slightly unfavored matchup into Aurora, but it's 50-50 into Enigma. You should probably just play Enigma then, right? Because you're going to have a better rest of your spread field. So I just think that this is one weekend where I think people are going to reflect back and be like, oh, I should have just played Aurora or maybe Enigma.
It's so funny because the thesis, in a sense, like contradicts itself. If you mean, like, the more people like ascribe to this thesis, the better sort of the antithesis of it gets.
For sure.
Which is if you're like gonna bring the deck that's like good into both of them, or like fine to both of them, but really bad to everything else. Suddenly that gets better the more this thesis is true, which kind of contradicts. It's a very weird spot, but I do agree.
But
with
it's
you.
going to be a hindsight piece, is the thing I'm saying. Like, I think there's going to be and it's so funny. But I think this is one where I think people might regret their deck choice.
I could see that for sure. But I think sheer power level wise, I think Aurora and Enigma are just like firmly at the top, and then you're trying to find cute things.
Do you want to talk just briefly about Limited?
Let's do it.
I think we're going to focus on a different way in Limited from the booth, from the coverage perspective this time, which I think is going to be really exciting, and how we look at draft with like the draft viewer. I think this draft format is, I said this last weekend, I think the play of this draft format is quite interesting. The draft itself, I think, is maybe a little bit on rails in some ways. There's some different archetypes you can kind of lean into and stuff like that.
I think the first half of Pack 1 is very, very interesting.
Yeah, how you set yourself up.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think the hybrids are like pretty cool, and like the way like the Draconics like antidote them into like the Fang and the Syndra.
The triangle.
But then there's there's the Assassin Ninja stuff, and then there's like the Assassin Warrior stuff as well. So there's like overlap against all of them. And I think the first like half of Pack 1, the way you approach that, and like whether you start forcing immediately or whether you are like keeping yourself in like a lane with like like whatever part of the triangle you're at, I think it is very, very cool. But to your point, I think afterwards it kind of quickly becomes on rails.
There's been a bit of discussion about like, is this format all the heroes are about even? Is this going to be a forcing format? We were kind of discussing for the pod. It sounds like we think that people are mostly going to play their lane, maybe have some preferences of like where they like to lean into, but people aren't necessarily going to force. I've heard about a little bit of forcing on different aspects of the heroes that people like, mostly on the Warrior and Ninja side. I've not necessarily heard as much about people forcing Assassin, but I'm sure there's some people who probably will. That might be a smaller group, but it sounds like for the most part, we think this draft format is going to be run by draft your seat, with a bias maybe to what you have enjoyed or had the most success with.
Yeah, I think so. On my side, I actually have heard people forcing Assassin and people forcing Ninja. I haven't heard a lot of forcing Warrior, which I think is very interesting. I think it is natural, and I think where I want to sort of frame this conversation is I think it is very similar to Uprising in many ways, in a sense of the triangle, right? Uprising was similar. We had Icelander, where it's like she's her own thing after there's a Draconic that like share cards, but this is like a little bit more of a firm triangle, because in that format, Icelander didn't share anything with Fire or Dromai, but in this format, Arachne does share things with Syndra and Fang. So it's more interesting in that sense. And also like the die roll kind of matters, a little bit more in this format compared to others.
Uprising matters as well, exactly.
Which is very similar to Uprising. But I think something that is different is that Uprising time, there was a larger contingent of people that firmly believed you just force fire.
Yes.
And like the force Dromai, force Icelander. That was like some people had those preferences.
Some people forced Dromai because it was so underrepresented. People just forced Dromai,
Exactly, but it was a bit less. Whereas in this one, I feel like I've been hearing more of an even spread. I've been hearing a bit more of an even spread. I know some people who are like, oh yeah, they have a strong preference for Syndra, and like if they're in the like a Draconic seat, like Syndra Fang, they'll just like Syndra it. And some people really like their Arachne builds. Like they found like unique strategies of Arachne, like the fatigue thing, or like they know how to draft the aggressive Arachne really, really well. So they like lean towards Arachne a bit more. I haven't heard the Fang side, but you were telling me before the pod that you've heard people who have a strong preference for Fang, and in some of your pods there were like 3 of Fang was like very, very common.
Yeah, quite common. Yeah, that kind of leads me to, I think, just I guess what we think the pods are going to shake out like. Like in my view, I think it's going to shake out like on average 3-3-2. I think we're going to see. I think this is a format we're not going to see a lot of 4s. People do all sorts of things. I think we're going to see a lot of just 3-3-2 splits, and I think a lot of the time we're going to see 2 Assassins. That's from my experience. I think that's what we're going to see. I think
we're going to see a lot of 2 of Fangs, which is, again, like my experience of it has been we've had more 3 Assassin pods than 3 Fang pods, which is interesting. I think this is going to be most similar. Like a graphic that shows up at the end of both drafts is like on the PT level events is like the heroes that were drafted like total across all the drafts. And I think it's going to be very similar to MST, where all 3 were very, very even and Zen was just slightly above. And I think it's going to be similar to that, where all 3 heroes are going to be very, very close to each other, and Syndra is just going to be a little bit above the other 2.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think that's going to do it for our kind of preview of the Pro Tour London. Let's hear a little bit more from some players from around the room.
The coverage team, more of those. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
I'm here with Pro Tour LA champion Arthur Trehe. Arthur, how are you doing, man?
Very good, thank you.
Okay, I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
First one, which hero is going to win Pro Tour London?
Do you want like hot take or cold take?
Hot take.
Okay, hot take, I will say Slippy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question, which player is going to win World Tour London?
So myself excluded,
Yes, yourself excluded, obviously, yes,
Okay.
yeah. I should have clarified that.
I will say Pablo Pintor, second time.
Okay, yeah, second PT champ, which hasn't happened yet, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Okay, final question. What are you most looking forward to for this weekend?
I don't know. Maybe I'd say drafting.
Drafting?
Yeah. Because I want to see if my prep was good enough. And yeah.
Are you enjoying Hunter Draft?
Yeah, it's fine. It's a bit technical, it's hard, but I like it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Arthur, for coming on and answering our questions. And yeah, good luck.
Thanks.
I am here with Sam O'Byrne, my partner in crime in the booth. How are you doing, man?
I'm stoked. Back in the booth with you. Nothing could be better. We got this guy behind the camera also in the booth. It's gonna be a great weekend.
Okay, all right. I just have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Which hero is winning World Tour London?
I think Enigma. Enigma's gonna win.
Okay, someone else also had that answer that we've spoken to so far. All right, which player is winning World Tour London?
Somebody playing Enigma.
We need a name, Sam.
Is Butcher playing? Enigma? No. Who was on Enigma recently? Florian Christian Login. He's been very close just recently, second place. I think this one going his way.
Okay, sounds good. And final question, what are you most looking forward to this weekend?
I am most looking forward to the feeling I hope to have when the stream has ended and people liked it and it went well and it's a big exhale. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Spoken like a true coverage producer of LSS. Thank you so much for coming on, Sam.
Yeah, let's have a good one.
And yeah, have a good one. Are we ready?
All right, I am here with world's top 8 competitor, Sam Sutherland, Australian national champion. I told Sam before, actually, I said I've had a vision that we're playing in this year's Australian national finals.
I see it.
It's going to happen.
I see it.
We're going to have a two-time Australian national champion.
Yeah.
All right, you're here with me for a couple of questions. First big question for you is which hero is winning this weekend at World Tour London, the Pro Tour?
I've actually got like a kind of out there one for you.
All right, give it to me.
I think Verdance could win this one. I'm
Verdance.
genuinely terrified of playing against that deck. If I played against it, I'd be like, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if we can do it.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, I could see that happening.
All right, Verdance, what about if not you this weekend, then who's winning the Pro Tour?
Okay, not a Verdance player, but I think that Dylan Thompson could take out this one on Prism. I think Prism's a really good call. I think he's found a list that really nails it. He's finally cut that shit card, Lost in Thought.
That sucks.
Yeah, that card sucks. But I think he can win this.
Nice. Shout out to Dylan again.
Yeah.
Give him 2 weeks in a row.
Double. Give it the double.
And what are you most looking forward to this weekend here at World Tour London?
Honestly, I don't know if it'll come together. Not draft. Far from draft. Honestly, outside of like just hanging out with people, having a good time, very specifically, if we get some karaoke in, that would be good.
See,
so we'll see it happen.
Pro players have fun too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam.
No worries.
I'm here with Mercy Bickle, finalist of World Tour Osaka. Mercy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Pankaj. How about you?
I'm all right. Looking forward to the weekend. So I've got a few questions for you. First one is, which hero is winning World Tour London?
That's easy. Aurora.
All right.
I think we're all calling it.
Yeah, that's definitely the deck to beat for sure. Okay, so if not you, who is winning World Tour London?
Also easy. That would be Brian Lorenz, who is my partner, but is also just a cracked Flesh and Blood player, and he's most definitely cracked when he's playing the best deck in the format.
I hear he's beating everyone up in testing.
Yes, he is single-handedly skewing all of the testing results. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, final question. What are you most looking forward to for this weekend?
I'm really looking forward to the look on my opponent's faces when I pull out some cards they're maybe not expecting.
Looks like we got some spice brewing in the kitchen over here. Well, thank you, Mercy, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you.